Rain pressed softly against the windows of the Morgan house, turning the quiet Vermont street into a blur of silver streaks and streetlight glow. Inside, the living room felt warm and calm, filled with the faint smell of chamomile tea and old wood polish. Claire Morgan stood near the kitchen counter, watching the kettle steam while listening to the steady rhythm of the rain. Peaceful evenings were rare treasures. Since her husband's death 5 years earlier, Claire had learned to move through life carefully, building routines that kept things steady for her and her son, Ethan. Dinner at 6. Tea at 7. One documentary or movie before bed. It was simple. Safe. But tonight felt different. Ethan sat on the couch, shoulders tight, one foot bouncing against the rug. His phone rested face down in his hand, like he was afraid to look at it or afraid someone else might see the screen. Claire noticed right away. She always did. Mothers learned these things the way sailors learned the weather, by watching small changes in the air. She poured hot water into 2 mugs and carried them into the living room. "Here," she said, setting one down in front of him. "Thanks." His voice was flat. Claire lowered herself into the armchair across from him. Steam curled upward between them. "How was school?" "Fine." She waited. He didn't say more. Claire studied his face, dark hair falling into his eyes, jaw clenched too tight for a boy his age. 17 already, she reminded herself. Not a child anymore. Yet sometimes he still looked at her the same way he had when he was 5, searching her face for answers she hadn't spoken yet. She took a slow sip of tea. Her thoughts drifted somewhere else entirely. Michael Parker. The name slipped into her mind before she could stop it. They had met 3 months ago at the town farmer's market when she dropped a bag of apples and he bent to help gather them. He had smiled, kind and awkward, and told her he was new in town. They kept running into each other after that, at the library, at the lakeside trail, at the coffee shop near Main Street. Coffee turned into longer talks. Long talks turned into walks that lasted until sunset. Nothing serious. Yet. But the word hope had started to feel less frightening. Claire hadn't told Ethan. Not because she thought she was doing something wrong. Because she was afraid of what would change once she did. Ethan shifted suddenly. "Mom." She looked up. "Yeah? Is there something you want to tell me?" Her fingers tightened around the mug. "What makes you think that?" He shrugged, eyes fixed on the dark screen of his phone. "Just wondering." The rain grew louder, drumming harder against the roof. Claire forced a small laugh. "You ask strange questions." He didn't smile back. A slow unease crawled through her chest. "If there was something," she added gently, "I'd tell you." Ethan nodded, but it didn't look like he believed her. Silence stretched between them, thin and sharp. Claire searched for something light to say, but her mind felt crowded. She thought about Michael's text from that afternoon, "Hope your day's good. Maybe we could meet this weekend?" She hadn't replied yet. Ethan's knee bounced faster. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah." Another lie. Or at least half of one. Thunder rumbled far away, low and distant, like the sky clearing its throat. Claire stood and carried her mug to the sink, needing something to do with her hands. She stared at her reflection in the window, soft lines around her eyes, hair pulled into a loose bun, the face of a woman who had survived more than she liked to admit. She wondered what Ethan saw when he looked at her. A mother. A widow. Someone who belonged only to him. She turned back toward the living room. "You hungry? I could make popcorn." Ethan shook his head. He looked like he wanted to say something and didn't know how. "Ethan," she said carefully, sitting again, "what's going on?" He hesitated. Then, "You've been distracted lately." Her breath caught. "I have?" "Yeah. You forget stuff. You check your phone more." Claire's pulse quickened. "That's not." He cut himself off, pressing his lips together. "What?" she asked. Nothing. The word landed heavy. Claire studied him, suddenly unsure where the ground was shifting beneath her feet. I'm still here, she said softly. Ethan looked up at that, eyes sharp. I know. But the way he said it sounded like a question. Lightning flashed outside, bright for half a second, lighting the room in white. Claire felt a strange chill move through her. She didn't know why. She just knew this quiet evening, this careful, familiar shape of their lives, was already beginning to bend. And she had no idea how much it would soon break. The next afternoon, the sky was a pale gray, heavy with clouds that threatened rain again. Claire had just returned from the grocery store when she heard a knock at the front door. She wiped her hands on her apron, heart skipping a beat for reasons she didn't fully understand. Standing there was Michael Parker, holding a small paper bag from the bakery. His hair was damp from the drizzle, and his cheeks were pink from the cold. Hi, he said, smiling nervously. I hope this isn't a bad time. I was in the area. Claire laughed softly, trying to hide her surprise. Not at all. Come in. She stepped aside, letting him into the warm living room. Steam from her kettle still lingered in the air, and the faint smell of cinnamon from the bread she had bought mingled with it. For a moment, Claire felt that gentle calm she had been missing, that quiet thrill whenever Michael was near. Then she heard the sharp voice from the stairs. Who is that? Claire froze. Her heart sank. Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, jaw tight. The air between them shifted instantly. Michael turned politely, trying to ease the tension. Hi. You must be Ethan. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Yeah. And you are? Claire swallowed, forcing herself to stay calm. This is Michael. A friend. The word friend came out heavier than she intended. Michael stepped forward, holding out the bag. I brought some muffins. Blueberry. I remembered you like them. Ethan's eyes darted from the bag to Claire. You didn't tell me someone was coming over. Claire felt a flicker of guilt and frustration. I didn't think it mattered. Ethan's voice sharpened. It does. We had plans. Claire frowned. We had plans? You said we'd watch that documentary, Ethan said, eyes flashing with accusation. I said maybe, she tried to explain, but the words sounded hollow even to her. Ethan's gaze shifted to Michael, then back at Claire. You don't usually forget. Claire's chest tightened. Something in Ethan's tone was raw and demanding, more than she was prepared to face. She could see the fear and confusion behind his anger, but it didn't make the situation easier. Michael cleared his throat, sensing the tension. I can come back another time if it's inconvenient. No, Claire said quickly, almost desperate. It's fine. She didn't want him to leave, not now. Ethan's voice grew quieter, yet still tense. We were supposed to spend time together. Just us. Claire's mind raced. How could she explain that Michael was just a part of her life, not a replacement for him? Ethan, that's not fair. You can't expect me to put my life on hold forever. He shook his head. I don't trust him. You barely know him, Claire said firmly, trying to keep her voice steady. He shouldn't take advantage of you, Ethan said, eyes fierce. Claire froze, startled by the intensity in his voice. What? Just, don't let him. Don't let anyone, Ethan said, turning away. Michael took a cautious step back toward the door. I should go, he said softly, his tone careful, polite. Claire's heart ached. She didn't want him to leave, yet the room felt too tense, too tight. Michael, wait, she said, but the words felt weak. He nodded politely, giving her a small, sad smile before stepping into the drizzle outside. Rain splashed across the porch as he walked away. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving only Claire and Ethan. Silence settled over the room, heavy and suffocating. Claire looked at her son, who was still standing there, shoulders slumped. His eyes were guarded, uncertain. That was rude, she said softly. It wasn't rude, Ethan replied, though his voice shook. I was protecting you. Claire's chest ached. Protecting her? From a man who had shown nothing but kindness? Ethan. I know you love me. But you can't control my life. I'm not trying to control you, he snapped, voice cracking. I don't want you to get hurt. You think I don't know that? Claire asked, her voice quiet now, almost a whisper. I've been careful my whole life. But I'm allowed to feel something again. I'm allowed to be happy. Ethan looked away, jaw tight, but she could see the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to argue, to push, but something inside him hesitated. Claire moved closer, kneeling slightly so they were at eye level. I'm not forgetting you, Ethan. You are my son. That will never change. He swallowed hard, silent for a long moment. Claire could feel the tension slowly drain out of him, replaced by a mix of hurt and understanding. I don't like change, he whispered finally, his voice raw. I know, Claire said gently, placing her hand over his. Change is hard. But sometimes, it's also good. Ethan didn't reply, but he didn't walk away either. Claire realized then that this moment, awkward, tense, and uncomfortable, was also a small step forward. A first step toward balance. Toward understanding. Outside, the rain had softened, turning into a gentle drizzle. The wind stirred the leaves, making them rustle against the windows. Inside, the room felt heavy, but also alive. Claire didn't know how long it would take for Ethan to truly accept Michael, or even for her to fully trust the future again, but for the first time, she felt a small spark of hope. A hope that maybe, slowly, the new life she wanted could exist alongside the bond she treasured most. And that evening, as she made them both a cup of tea, she realized she was standing on the edge of something delicate, fragile, and entirely hers to navigate. The quiet tension between mother and son wasn't gone. It had shifted, changed shape. And Claire knew this was only the beginning. The next afternoon, the sky was heavy with clouds, low and gray, threatening rain again. Claire had just returned from the grocery store, her hands still carrying the smell of fresh bread and herbs, when she heard a knock at the door. She wiped them quickly on her apron, heart skipping a beat. Standing there was Michael Parker. He looked slightly nervous, holding a small paper bag from the local bakery. His hair was damp from the drizzle, and his cheeks were pink from the cold. Hi, he said, voice careful but warm. I hope this isn't a bad time. I was nearby and thought I'd drop by. Claire blinked, taken by surprise, and quickly smiled. No, it's fine. Come in. She stepped aside, letting him enter. The warmth of the house felt comforting, but something in the pit of her stomach told her the moment wasn't entirely simple. Inside, the faint smell of chamomile tea still lingered, mixing with the faint cinnamon scent of the bread she had bought. Claire set the grocery bags down, trying to focus on making Michael feel welcome. But before she could even take a breath, a sharp voice cut through the air. Who is that? Claire's heart lurched. Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, his expression tense. The sudden shift in energy made the room feel smaller, tighter. Michael straightened and gave a polite smile. Hi. You must be Ethan. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Yeah. And you are? Claire swallowed, feeling a sudden tightness in her chest. This is Michael. A friend, she said, emphasizing the word friend, though it carried more weight than she intended. Michael stepped forward slightly, holding out the bag. I brought some muffins. Blueberry. I remembered you like them. Ethan's gaze darted between Michael and Claire. You didn't tell me someone was coming over, he said, voice sharp. Claire felt a jolt of guilt. I didn't think it mattered, she said. It does. Ethan snapped. We had plans. Claire blinked. We had plans? You said we'd watch that documentary. I said maybe, she tried to explain, but the words sounded weak. Ethan's eyes shifted back to Michael, then to his mother. You don't usually forget, he said quietly, but the edge in his voice made it feel like an accusation. Claire's chest tightened. She felt caught between protecting her relationship with her son and wanting to welcome Michael into her life. Ethan, that's not fair. You can't expect me to put my life on hold forever. I don't trust him, Ethan said, voice shaking but firm. You barely know him, Claire replied, trying to remain calm. He shouldn't take advantage of you, Ethan said, and the intensity of his words made Claire pause. What? She asked, stunned. Just, don't let him. Don't let anyone, Ethan said, turning away. Michael stepped back toward the door, giving Claire a small, apologetic look. I can come back another time, he said softly. No, Claire said immediately. It's fine. She didn't want him to leave, not now. But the room felt heavy, too charged to relax. Ethan's voice softened slightly, but the tension remained. We were supposed to spend time together. Just us. Claire's thoughts raced. How could she explain that Michael wasn't a replacement for him, that he was just someone who made her feel alive again? Ethan, that's not fair. I'm allowed to feel something again. I'm allowed to be happy. He looked away, jaw tight, but she could see the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to argue, to push, but something inside him held him back. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. I'm not forgetting you, Ethan. You're my son. That will never change. He swallowed hard, silent for a moment. Then he whispered, I don't like change. I know, Claire said softly. Change is hard. But sometimes it can be good too. Ethan didn't respond. He stayed there, silent, shoulders tense, trying to process the storm inside him. Claire felt her own chest tighten. She had hoped Michael's presence would be simple, a casual visit, but it had stirred something deeper, fear, protectiveness, a need to control, even if he didn't fully understand it. The room fell quiet. Outside, the drizzle turned to soft rain, and the wind made the leaves scratch against the windows. Inside, the tension lingered, but beneath it, a fragile understanding began to grow. Claire realized that this confrontation, uncomfortable and raw as it was part of the process. Ethan wasn't trying to hurt her. He was trying to protect what mattered most to him. And she could see, just faintly, the beginnings of acceptance forming. Not full trust yet, not complete understanding, but a first step toward balance. Claire made a quiet decision. She would not push Michael away. She would not let fear dictate her happiness. And she would find a way to navigate her son's feelings without diminishing her own. She moved to the kitchen and began making them both a cup of tea, hoping this simple act might ease the tension. Ethan remained on the stairs, silent, but he didn't leave either. As she handed him a mug, their fingers brushed briefly. He didn't pull away. That small contact, a quiet acknowledgement, felt like a tiny victory. Claire realized then that the next steps would be delicate. It would take patience, honesty, and trust. But she also knew that love, whether between mother and son, or herself and Michael, was worth the careful effort. Outside, the rain continued, gentle but steady. Inside, the room felt charged with emotion, but also with possibility. Claire looked at Ethan and silently promised herself she would navigate this new chapter with care, understanding, and courage. The quiet tension was still there, but it had shifted. And Claire knew this was only the beginning of learning to balance love, boundaries, and the possibility of happiness once again. Claire woke up that Tuesday morning to a heavy silence in the house. The kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for something to happen. She made herself a cup of coffee, staring out at the gray sky through the kitchen window. Rain had fallen overnight, leaving the air damp and the street outside shimmering with puddles. She tried to focus on simple things, the way steam rose from the mug, the smell of the coffee, the quiet rhythm of her own breathing. But her phone buzzed, breaking the calm. She picked it up, frowning at the sender, Michael Parker. Her stomach tightened as she opened the message. Claire, I think it's best if we slow things down. Ethan came to see me at school. He had concerns. I don't want to cause trouble for your family. Claire's heart skipped. She felt a rush of panic and guilt mixed together, a tight knot in her chest. She didn't wait to think, she grabbed her coat and keys and drove straight to the house, hoping she would find Ethan still inside. He was in the kitchen when she arrived, sitting at the table with his homework spread out in front of him. His head was down, scribbling notes, pretending nothing had happened. Claire's chest hurt. She leaned against the doorframe quietly, waiting for the right words. "Did you talk to Michael?" she asked softly, trying to keep her voice even. Ethan froze mid-sentence, pencil hovering over the paper. "Yes," he admitted finally. Claire's pulse quickened. "Why?" "He works at my school," Ethan said defensively, glancing at her. "I had a right." "You went behind my back," she said, her voice firm but shaking. "He needed to know." "Know what?" "That you're lonely," Ethan said, eyes dark. "That you rush into things. That he shouldn't take advantage of you." Claire froze, the words hitting her harder than she expected. "He's not taking advantage of me," she whispered, her voice low. Ethan's shoulders slumped, but he didn't look sorry. "He's not Dad," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I know that." Claire snapped, then immediately softened, seeing the hurt and fear in his eyes. "But I'm allowed to feel something again, Ethan. I'm allowed to care about someone." He looked away, jaw tight, struggling with something she couldn't see fully. Claire crossed the kitchen slowly and sat across from him, reaching for his hand. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." "But you did," he whispered, voice trembling. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Claire tried to steady her own breathing. "I raised you to speak up, to protect what's important," she said gently. "But not to control my life. You can't decide who I care about. That's mine to choose." Ethan's eyes met hers, a flicker of guilt in them. "I was scared," he admitted. "Of what?" she asked softly. "That you'd fall for him, and forget me," he said, voice breaking. Claire felt tears sting her eyes. She had never realized how much Ethan's fear of losing her had weighed on him. "I could never forget you," she whispered. She pulled him into a hug, feeling the tension in his body slowly melt against her own. He clung to her, and for a moment, everything felt fragile but safe. Claire could feel the mix of love, frustration, and fear that Ethan carried, and she understood why he had acted the way he did. But it didn't erase the fact that he had crossed a boundary, and she needed him to understand that too. "I know you love me, Ethan," she said, her voice soft. "And I love you too. But love doesn't mean we stop living our lives. It doesn't mean you have to protect me from everything." He nodded, quiet, still holding her hand. "I'm sorry for crossing that line," he admitted finally. Claire hugged him tighter. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." They sat together in silence for a while, the storm outside echoing the storm they had just navigated inside. Claire realized that this conversation, painful as it had been, had opened the door to understanding, not just for Ethan but for herself. She knew she needed to talk to Michael. She needed to be honest about Ethan's fears, but also about her own feelings. She couldn't let guilt or fear dictate her choices anymore. She wanted Michael back in her life, slowly, but she also needed Ethan to feel safe, not displaced. Later that evening, Claire sent a message to Michael, carefully choosing each word. She explained Ethan's fear, his protective instincts, and reassured him that she wanted to continue their connection, just more cautiously. When she put down her phone, she felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. She had faced the hardest part, the unspoken tension between her son's love and her own heart. Ethan came into the living room a few minutes later. His eyes were softer now, less guarded. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Claire smiled gently. "I'm okay. Better, actually. We just have to figure out how to make room for everyone's feelings." He nodded slowly. "I want you to be happy. Really. I don't always know how." "I know," Claire said. And that's okay. We'll learn together. The rain had stopped, leaving the night quiet and cool. A single streetlight glowed outside, reflecting off the wet pavement. Claire sat back in her chair, feeling the tension of the day slowly release. She knew the next steps would be delicate. Michael would return, cautiously, and Ethan would watch, protect, and test boundaries. But she also knew this: love didn't come without challenges. And she was ready to face them. For the first time in a long while, Claire felt a spark of hope. Hope that balance, understanding, and new beginnings were possible, even after fear and mistakes. And as she looked at Ethan sitting quietly across from her, she realized that learning to love again wasn't just about romance. It was about trust, forgiveness, and the courage to open her heart while holding on to what mattered most. The night was calm, but inside Claire, everything had shifted. She was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to live, and to love, with her heart wide open, ready for whatever came next. Explain Part 4 in 800 words. Write the story fast pace, don't repeat things, use simple words. Write only the story. Story must be good. Write the story according to YouTube monetization policies. Write in storytelling style. Claire stood by the lake that afternoon, the autumn wind tugging at her coat. The trees along the shore had turned gold and red, their reflection trembling on the water's surface. She held a mug of coffee in both hands, hoping the warmth inside would steady the swirl of thoughts and feelings in her head. After the tension with Ethan and Michael's sudden retreat, she needed clarity, needed a moment to breathe alone. The crunch of footsteps on the gravel made her turn. Michael Parker appeared, his coat damp from the light drizzle that had begun again. He stopped a few feet away, hesitant, as though approaching her required careful permission. "Claire," he said softly, voice carrying over the quiet lap of the water. She blinked, holding back a rush of emotion. "Michael," she replied, unsure if she was relieved, nervous, or a mixture of both. He stepped closer, careful to respect the distance. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me again." "I wasn't sure either," she admitted. The words came quietly, honestly. "It's been complicated." Michael nodded, his eyes gentle but searching. "I know what happened with Ethan. After you confronted him, he told me everything. I wanted to respect him, respect you. I didn't want to cause more problems for your family." Claire sighed, feeling the weight of the past weeks. "He's still learning, you know? Where his world ends and mine begins." Michael's gaze softened. "He loves you. That's clear. And I understand why he reacted the way he did. But Claire, I don't want fear to make my choices for me. I want honesty, even if it's slow." Claire's heart caught. She had been waiting for him to say something like this, but the reality of it made her chest tighten. She had wanted clarity, but the moment of truth felt fragile, like glass in her hands. "So, what are you saying?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper, almost afraid of the answer. Michael stopped walking, looking out over the lake for a moment. "I'm saying I'd like to try again," he said carefully. Slowly. With honesty. No pretending. No rushing. Just us, figuring it out together. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. She swallowed, letting the words sink in. She wanted this too. More than she had realized. The fear, the tension with Ethan, the weeks of waiting, it had all been a test of patience and courage. "I'd like that too," she said softly, smiling through the warmth in her chest. Later that evening, she found Ethan in the living room. He was quietly reading, pretending to be absorbed in a book, but she could see the tension in his posture, the lingering uncertainty in his eyes. She sat beside him and took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something," she began gently. "Michael and we want to try again." Slowly, carefully. "But I want you to know you're not being replaced. You'll always be my son. That will never change." Ethan looked up, jaw tight, eyes searching hers. He didn't smile, but he didn't argue either. Instead, he nodded slowly. "I I'm sorry for crossing that line, he said quietly. Claire's chest softened at his words. She hugged him gently. Thank you. That means a lot. For the first time in weeks, a sense of calm settled in the room. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. The bond between mother and son, the careful beginnings with Michael, and the quiet hope that filled the air, it all felt balanced in a new way. The days after that were filled with small adjustments. Claire, Michael, and Ethan learned to navigate new boundaries, testing them gently. Dinner became a time of conversation again, laughter slowly returning. Michael respected Ethan's space, never forcing himself into moments that weren't ready. Ethan, in turn, began to loosen his protective guard, seeing that his mother's happiness didn't take away from their bond. One evening, Claire sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. Michael joined her, silent for a moment, letting the color settle between them. You've been patient, Claire said softly. More than I deserved. I wanted to be, he replied, taking her hand in his. Because you and Ethan, you matter. All of you. Claire smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. The worry, the fear, the uncertainty, they were still there sometimes, lingering like shadows, but they no longer ruled her. She could feel hope again, the kind that wasn't fragile but steady, built slowly with care, honesty, and trust. Later that night, she checked on Ethan before bed. He was asleep with a book beside him, a small smile on his face, a rare peacefulness that made her heart ache with love. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead and whispered, "We're going to be okay." Outside, the wind rustled the leaves gently, carrying the scent of the lake and the promise of change. Claire looked up at the sky, knowing that life wouldn't always be simple, that challenges would come, but also knowing that love, careful, patient, real love, was worth the risk. And for the first time in a long while, Claire felt ready. Ready to embrace the new beginnings, ready to share her heart again, ready to balance the love for her son with the chance at something more for herself. Change was here, but it wasn't frightening anymore. It was full of possibility, delicate yet strong, and Claire knew she had the courage to step into it. That night, as the moon reflected off the lake, Claire held Michael's hand, feeling Ethan's presence in her heart, and finally understood that love could grow in layers, slowly, patiently, and beautifully, without ever replacing what came before. She had learned to let go, to trust, and to love fully, knowing that the bonds that mattered most could withstand even the hardest tests. The future felt open, hopeful, and alive. And for Claire, that was everything.